Hi, welcome to Monster Transmission. Today you're with Kurt in the shop, and we're going to actually go over how to install a servo, a performance servo, also known as a Corvette servo. We're going to put this on a 4060, and I'll show you how to take the servo out of the transmission, how to replace the servo, measure the servo pin, check the adjustments, reinstall it, and how to check the clearance of the servo after you've installed it. So we're going to get started on how to install the servo. This is a performance servo you get here at Monster. It's installed in most of our units, 700, 460, 65s. There's no written instructions for this. It'll come with the new rings and seals. We'll lay it up here. And the actual servo. So this is for the 1-2 shift. This is the 1-2 servo assembly. We do have one for 4th gear, and that's a separate servo. So we're just going to work on this Corvette servo. We're going to install it in the transmission. I've already pre-removed the pump assembly, which is not necessary if you're just changing the servo. But to check the clearance, you do need to see in there where the strut of the actual servo, the strut mechanism, when it hits the band, how much clearance you have. So you'll need to check that after you've installed the new servo. So we're going to take the servo out of the case, but before we remove it, safety first. Got to put our safety glasses on. And what you're going to do, this is the servo area here. This is the 4th gear cover outside the transmission case. And there's a metal snap ring fit into a channel in the casting of the case. So we're going to remove that snap ring, and then this servo cover will slide outward, and then you remove a seal. So what we'll first do, we got to soften it up. Yeah, that just means just tap it gently, because if it's been in the transmission for a while, it has built up a really tight seal, and it'll be difficult to remove it. So once you've loosened it up, we're going to push in on the cover, and it just remove the snap ring. There's the metal ring. I just applied some pressure on it to hold the cover in. It will pop out some because there is spring tension behind it. Use a pair of channel lock pliers if you want, and you walk it left and right. It'll come up to the seal. The seal is usually blue or black, and you have to remove this seal. And what you could do is just stretch it or cut it like I just did. So we're going to remove that seal. I cut it to remove it, and now the cover will literally fall out of the case. And this is a 4th gear piston, goes in the cover. And now you can remove the actual servo assembly out of the case. What we're going to do is we're going to replace this portion of the servo. Is going to be replaced with this servo. And if you see the end here, see the big difference. See, this is the factory servo, and this is the Corvette. So this is the size piston that was in the transmission applying 2nd gear. And this is the new Corvette design, or the larger design. See how much more surface is applying pressure to clamp down on the band. So this is a much larger piston area to help clamp the band when it shifts into 2nd gear. So the first area we're going to work on is there is a spring assembly here on the servo and a C-clip. We're simply going to remove that C-clip, and there's a washer, and there's a spring assembly, and you can slide the servo pin out. We also get a lot of questions that, you know, what is the correct length of the servo pin? Well, depends on the casting of the case, whether it's a 700, 460, 65, and they do have different length pins. They have different number of rings, 2 or 3 rings on the piston. So if you want to know what height you have, you can measure it, simple measurement. Usually they're around 5 inch. This is like 5 1/8. So sometimes after installing this new cover, it may require you to grind a little bit, maybe up to a 1/16 or even up to an 1/8 of an inch off the end of the shaft, because if it's too long, it will hold the band on all the time. So you won't have that 1-2 shift. In fact, if feel that the vehicle is stalling out because it's applying the band, even if you're in reverse. You can also use a mic to mic it. Again, they're usually around 5 inches. So this is right at 5.03 inches. So if you grind it and you remeasure it, there's a more accurate way of measuring how much you've ground off. But it can be ground even after you've assembled the servo. So we'll work on that after we've assembled the servo assembly. So the next part you have to remove, you remove the snap ring because you need this cover and the spring behind it will need to be installed in this area of the new servo. If you have a foot press or a press of some sort, it make it much easier for the reinstall. All right, once you remove the snap ring, remove the cover, and there's a spring assembly. So you're going to replace this spring in the cover, the new Corvette cover. Put this cover on. We'll take this back to a foot press, compress this down, and reinstall the snap ring. Snap ring goes right into a channel area right here is where this snap ring will fit. Okay, we now have the snap ring in the channel. We're now going to reinstall the pin. Slides through this way through the servo assembly. You're going to install the spring, the washer, and then reinstall the C-clip. So now the piston's installed into the new servo assembly. It comes with 2 Teflon rings. They're a chafe, or means cut ring. You'll notice that the ring is cut at an angle, and it will set on top of each other. You ensure that it doesn't set the wrong direction. It has to set to where they come to the same thickness as the rest of the ring. What I do is I curl it up to make it smaller diameter, compress it, and then install it. You install one side of the ring at a time. And basically walk it around the servo to install it. And repeat with the smaller ring. I'm going to coil it down, make it smaller. Install it to the channel on the servo. Make sure it's all the way in the channel. Use some trans gel. You're going to lubricate this before you install it back in the case. This servo will fit this pattern. The kit will come with 2 seals. The red seal will actually go on the actual second gear servo. Fits in the channel right here. Same thing, you're going to lubricate it because you're going to slide this back into the case. And this seal is the seal we cut, taking it out. Here's a cover. It has its own ring, but you do not need to replace that. But again, I will put a little trans gel on it. And it has a taller land on this side of the piston, 4th gear piston, and it's almost level here. You want the taller portion to fit into the cover, so that will fit down in like so. You can also tell it has a wear mark here, and that's from riding on the top of the piston here. And actually we'll put a wear mark on the actual 4th gear piston. We're going to install the seal. Again, we're going to put some trans gel to help slide in the case without cutting the edge of the seal. And this is the return spring for the servo assembly. This will slide up in the case, and the casting of the case will have an area. This will slide right over it. And then the piston will slide through the center. Return spring for the servo slides into the case and sets on a land and casts it into the case. And then this is the servo assembly, the 1-2 servo assembly. You slide this to the center. Push it all the way through until you see it hit the band. And now we're going to install the cover. Push in on the cover. Reapply the snap ring. Now the servo is installed. And now we're going to do what they call a static test, an air test. There's a relief port for the servo assembly right along the pan rail. It's a little hole right here. It's actually part of the pan rail. So we're going to air test the seals that we just installed on the servo. We'll blow air into that port, and you'll hear the actual piston apply. And if you look down, because we had the pump off, you'll see the band clamp down and hold the drum. And now the drum does not move, even though the input shaft is spinning. You release the air pressure. You notice it will release the band and allow the drum to spin freely. So that's how you can check that the band is working or not. If the band strut is too short, what would happen is it will not clamp and stop the drum from moving. If it is too tight, you'll have a really hard time installing the cover because the pin is too long, and again, it will have the band applied all the time. Okay, to verify the pin length is correct, after you've installed the servo, if you cannot get this cover on, you keep pressing and you can't get the cover on, either one of the pistons is here, the lip seal is being cut and it's not sealing properly, or the pin is too long and it's already applying the band, holding the band on, and you can't get the cover on, which means you may have to grind a little bit down and then retry it. So if the drum continues to turn after assembly is installed and applied, and the lower reverse drum continues to turn when you turn this input shaft, that means the pin is too short, and you may have to replace that pin to correct that problem. But if you have any other questions on any transmission parts with Monster Transmissions, give us a call toll free 800-708-0087, and we'll talk to you then.